I'll use this. This is fine, but I might need some water. Yes. Dear Minister, Professor Krenzel, Professor Leptin, Björn, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to be here today and to see what you have achieved, to see so many of you here. It's always actually the greatest pleasure for me to be in academic environments. Yes, that's fine. Thank you. Great. That'll do. There is a risk. It's just water. So, research and innovation is certainly a timely subject. And it's particularly apt, of course, for Luxembourg, a country that has invested so much over the last 2 decades to become such a center of excellence for research and innovation. President Macron spoke at the Sorbonne last week, and he declared that, quite unexpectedly actually, Europe should become a continent that invests in breakthrough innovation and advanced fundamental research. And in the same week as Macron's speech, we saw the publication of Enrico Letta's long-anticipated report to the European Council on the future of the single market. Again, surprisingly, at least for some of us, one of his major recommendations was to create, I quote, a fifth freedom for research, innovation, and education as an essential complement to the more traditional freedoms. So we have the freedoms of movement, et cetera, but he called for a fifth freedom. I mean, that is groundbreaking. We're also expecting another report on EU competitiveness, which will be authored by Mario Draghi, to come out soon. And from discussions with Draghi and what we're hearing, we're again going to be hearing an emphasis on research and innovation. So these are really encouraging signs that the importance of research and innovation is being recognized at the highest political levels. And that's timely because important decisions on the EU's next long-term budget need to be taken before the middle of the next year. You know the budget occurs in 7-year periods, and everyone in Brussels and elsewhere is already very busy thinking about the next funding period. And so all this input is important at this time point. So our own scientific council, the Scientific Council of the ERC, has also been thinking about what the next EU research program should look like. You may not know, unlike other agencies that of the framework program Horizon Europe in Brussels, the ERC is led by a scientific council composed of 22 international scientists and researchers across all the fields of academic research, and one of yours, Björn Ottersen, is one of the members of this council, and they set the strategy. So in this council, we've been thinking about what the next EU research program should look like, and I want to share with you our main messages. And I'm going to get straight to the point. I hope to persuade not only you, but everyone in Europe that it is necessary to support an ambitious EU budget for research and innovation with the ERC as a central component. So the ERC was established in 2007, and it's been highly effective in supporting curiosity-driven frontier research across all fields, based only on scientific excellence. Note that we like to say frontier research, not necessarily fundamental research. We've just had an argument once again to explain that we support engineering, we support the medical research, as long as it's frontier, as long as it's groundbreaking discoveries. Such discoveries can be made not only in fundamental research, but also in applied research, and that too is funded by the ERC. Of course, I always want to emphasize in this context that it's extremely important, I feel, for a cultured nation like Europe, a rich nation, to also fund purely curiosity-driven research that might never have an application, whether that is about ancient caves, about a human history, about languages, etc. So you know, we fund all that, but I want to stress here in this context that we use the term frontier, not fundamental. So the ERC, the EU has been funding research for a long time, ever since its inception. But what the ERC has given is a new dimension to those funding programs that complements the traditional top-down approaches, and it provides now a benchmark for excellence in European research. And we feel the EU should build on this success and strengthen the ERC in the next research framework program. The philosophy of the ERC rests on the idea that researchers know best what the most promising research areas are that they should explore. You guys know better than any politician what is at the very forefront at your field. When you go to conferences, you hear what's going on in other fields. You put those details together and come up with the next big ideas. You don't need politicians to tell you that. So that is the philosophy of the ERC, that researchers know best what promising research areas they should explore. So we don't ask our researchers to tell us what societal problems they're going to solve or what impact their research is going to have, because we don't necessarily know. I'll get back to that. And I think this approach has been vindicated by the research that the ERC has funded over the past 17 years. This research has demonstrated the amazing creativity and talent of Europe's best researchers when they are given the freedom to simply propose their best ideas and receive the funding to implement them. So between them, the ERC's grantees have won 14 Nobel Prizes, 6 Fields Medals, 11 Wolf Prizes, Kavli Prizes, and many other international prizes. ERC-funded researchers have advanced knowledge at the forefront of research, and thereby also contributed to many of the wider goals of the EU in terms of the green transition, digital transition, and they have addressed societal challenges such as improving health and addressing demographic trends. So the pandemic has, of course, given us one of the most spectacular examples of the effectiveness of investing in frontier research with the development of the mRNA vaccines. ERC-funded scientists such as Uğur Şahin were at the forefront of this pioneering work. He was funded actually to develop mRNA vaccines for something else, but with the freedom that the money gave him and with the knowledge he'd gained from using mRNA vaccines against cancer, he could immediately switch. He didn't need a Project Warp Speed or anything. He was able to do it based on the knowledge. Similarly, Adrian Hill in Oxford was funded by the ERC and came up with one of the other vaccines that were produced in Europe. So we have many other examples, whether it's in quantum computing, in photovoltaics and solar cells, and other fields. Indeed, an amazing number of 40% of all ERC projects have produced results that were subsequently cited in patent applications. And I've been telling you that the ERC also funds research in areas that are really not meant for that. So real ivory tower research, and yet 40% end up being cited in patents. That's higher than many of the other programs that are targeted towards that kind of research. And about 400 ERC projects, or 400 ERC-funded researchers have founded startup companies. Again, even though this is not what their research was funded for. And they weren't told about this before they started or evaluated for this. So you can see that by funding the top researchers to work on their best ideas, one sort of gets other outcomes and impacts for free, as it were. And we get unexpected results. And these results can provide answers to questions that we didn't even know we should be asking. And create opportunities that we couldn't anticipate. So the trajectory of radically new science and technologies has, in fact, also historically more often followed surprising paths than it has been the result of rational planning. You can't easily plan discoveries. And we know that even when research is directed at particular goals, there's no guarantee that the chosen path is the one thanks to which these goals will eventually be met. You know that from your own research. Stuff comes in from the side and from unexpected angles. So we believe that by providing this broad basis, the ERC has been a decisive factor for the European research area, and one which was long called for before it was funded, and it's proven itself. So the Scientific Council is concerned that with increasing global competition, time is running out for Europe to maintain its position in global research and technology. And we think that to keep pace, it will be an essential step to modernize the long-term EU budget, and in particular, to double the spending for research and innovation in the next framework program, the next multi-annual financial framework. Now, this call to double the research budget is not new. The Lamy Group, in their last assessment a few years ago, already called for a doubling of the research funding in 2018 for the current Horizon Europe program. We didn't get that. But we really don't have much time to waste. Europe clearly has the talent, a lot of it right here, to be world leading in science and technology, but we are struggling to keep up with our main research competitors in research funding, in scientific output, and especially in new and emerging fields. And European industry is not specialized in the fastest growing sectors. So according to the OECD's last statistics, the EU economy as a whole spent 400 billion on R&D in 2021. In the same year, China spent 620 billion, and the US spent 710 billion. So this disparity is bad enough, but the further problem is, if we look at the corporate R&D, so not government spent, but the corporate R&D in Europe, just over 50% is in the automotive and pharma sectors. Now, these are great. They bring us great wealth, but they're old sectors. We're proud of them. I'm German, of course. We've got great pharma and cars. But only 15% are spent on ICT hardware and software. Meanwhile, Chinese corporate R&D spends 33% on ICT, and US corporate R&D 53% on those sectors that will be so important for the future. So what this means, if you compare that, is that a single US corporation, Amazon, which I know has a big presence here, now spends nearly the same on R&D as the entire French economy together spends on R&D, namely 73 billion. So what can we do? There seems to be an often made claim that European science is world leading, so our research is world leading, and the only problem is to translate this knowledge into innovation, or else to direct European researchers towards addressing the correct societal and technological challenges. I think this argument is hard to sustain too. If we look at the most significant scientific publications, I'll now go for the top 1% most cited, not the top 10% most cited we've just heard. The EU share in the world is 18%, compared to 23% for China and 27% for the US. So we're lagging behind, and we used to poo-poo China for saying, oh, it's just not so important science they're doing. They've overtaken us in the top 1% cited. And when we now look at the scientific fields again, we see that the EU leads in only 2 of 20 of the fields that have been analyzed. And those are historical studies and biology. We're also close to China in mathematics and statistics and agricultural, fisheries and forestry. and to the US in economics and business, close, but not there. But in all other fields, either the US or China have a clear lead over the EU, including enabling and strategic technologies, information and communication technologies, biomedical research, and earth and environmental sciences. All the things that our future will be based on. And if we look at the new and emerging fields, the US and China have an even bigger lead. For example, a recent analysis shows the clear dominance of US institutions and companies in the top 100 most influential recent publications in AI for the years 2020, 21, 22. And in fact, in 2020, Meta alone produced more of the most influential AI publications than the whole EU together. So much for Europe being leading in research. And, you know, this is not new. We can look at Nobel Prizes or at the Turing Awards. Since the award was first awarded in 1966, there have been 77 winners, but only 9 with an EU affiliation. So this is not new. So it seems much easier to believe that now Europe's underperformance in industrial R&D and innovation is linked to Europe's underperformance in new and emerging scientific fields. We cannot hope to be a leader in industry or innovation without being a leader in science and technology. I think it's really important for everyone to understand this point. Whatever our end goal is, whether it's to manage the green or the digital transitions or to promote innovation or to strengthen industrial competitiveness, public investment in scientific research is an essential feature of any effective innovation system. Public research plays a key role in innovation systems by providing new knowledge and pushing the knowledge frontier, as I've said. And universities and public research institutions often can undertake longer term and higher risk research than can industry, and they complement the activities of the private sector. So we'll not meet any of our goals if we neglect this foundation. For example, in recent years, nobody, not even the researchers working on them, really anticipated the capabilities of the latest large language models, foundational models. And even though it's now mostly private sector companies that are taking the lead in this field, the basic research and techniques that they're using all came out of basic research that was funded in the public sector for decades. So Europe really needs to up its game both in research and innovation. They're intimately linked and have always been so. If we don't act now and current trends continue, they will increasingly undermine Europe's economy, competitiveness, and social model, as well as ultimately threaten our standing in the world and our strategic autonomy and our security. Of course, reversing these trends will require huge efforts at the EU and at the national levels. It won't be easy. We or they need to reform and restructure our higher education and research systems to make them fit for the rest of the 21st century. And of course, I want to recognize the efforts that Luxembourg is already making. This is really a central element in the necessary form of our economies. But another essential prerequisite is to modernize the EU budget. I've mentioned the doubling of the budget for research and innovation in the next framework program, which will yield high returns due to the EU level collaboration, scale, and the EU level competition. So your researchers who've won ERC grants have won them in competition with all the other researchers throughout Europe. And I've recently talked to somebody who didn't get an ERC grant, then get it and said, that is what is good. We are made to compete at a level that challenges us and that really forces us to think as hard as we can to reach the highest goals we can. So that's important, and this investment is crucial for Europe to regain its competitive edge in global science and technology. We've got to get closer to the spending of our competitors, and we have to maximize the returns we get from every euro spent. So if we want to aspire to a position of leadership in new and emerging areas of science, we also have to allow our best researchers the freedom to use their own creativity. The ERC has funded over 13,000 projects, but that was only 60% of those that were ranked by our evaluation panels as excellent. So there's another 40,000, another 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 projects that we could have funded that were practically equally excellent and worth funding, and Europe would have benefited from. So we could afford to spend much more for research and innovation and invest it into what has proven to work. So again, I want to cite Macron by something he said last week. He said, Horizon Europe must be reinforced by focusing on the most effective programs, such as the ERC. That, of course, was music in our ears, but I hope you can agree, and I hope we can rely on all of you to make that message heard at the highest level in Europe. And by the way, I hope you all go and vote in the EU elections. I know we sometimes don't care. Maybe Luxembourg is different from my country. Many people don't think it's very important what they do. It's becoming so important. And the danger of some of our MEPs being replaced by those who do not engage in rational thinking is real. So please go and vote and convince all your families and friends and relations to vote. Okay, back to my speech. But what about the countries and regions that do not receive significant funding from the framework program or that many ERC grants? ERC grants are not distributed equally, and they often complain. What about this research and innovation divide? Where's the value of expanding the framework program for them? For those who get lots of ERC, sure. But even to that, for me, the answer is clear. If you look at the many widening countries, they're not somehow mired in stagnation. On the contrary, if you look at the statistics, these countries have the fastest growing economies, some of the fastest growing economies in the EU, and indeed the world. Luxembourg was a bright example of how continued reforms and investment can turn things around, with Luxembourg turning from its status as a widening to one of the leading R&D countries in Europe. So the point is that economies on the technological frontier need new knowledge all the time in order to grow further. But countries that are not there yet can enjoy catch-up growth, as we're seeing in many of our eastern neighbor countries. In both situations, it's possible to reap the benefits of the research and innovation carried out in other countries, especially if countries are linked in a single market. So we should also celebrate our neighbors' research and innovation. It's a condition for our future growth. Finally, a point I want to make is that our scientific council's independence has been critical to the ERC's success. This independence entails the ability to determine exactly how the ERC calls are run, how the grants are evaluated, and how we serve the individual researchers who receive that money. And the most important issue is really to maintain the high quality of ERC's selection process. This is the core of the ERC's excellence, something that can't simply be taken for granted. Every year, we need to keep persuading many high-level scientists from around the world to serve on our panels. These are people who are very much in demand, and we need over 1,000 of them every year just for the panels, and another 6,000 as remote expert referees. We have simple and tailored procedures that provide flexibility that allow us to respond to the need of the scientific community. And we are very concerned that they should not be hampered by standardized processes and systems across the entire research framework and other EU funding programs. So that independence needs to be protected, and we again must rely on the research, on the support from the research community to defend that. So, if we want to lead in Europe and have the autonomy to choose our own path, then we need to be the first to discover and to master and understand the latest knowledge. We can't lead by developing ideas that were first developed outside Europe. We can't be sovereign if we rely on technologies developed by others. And that's why it's vital that EU funding provides support for research and innovation in a balanced way. Focusing too much on short-term results will put the future seeds of innovation at risk, and our brightest talents will not be content to be imitators instead of inventors. Many might decide to leave the EU. So that's why EU research funding cannot be diverted to pay for current initiatives in other areas. We hear the need for spending in defense, in all sorts of other areas. If we divert money from research spending, that only reduces our potential for solving problems in the future. So we have to think very hard about making sure we have the right balance between funding short-term economic development and long-term economic growth. We have the talent to be world-leading in science and technology. The research community in Europe, you all, stand ready and available to make a huge contribution to achieving Europe's ambition and addressing Europe's challenges. And what we are asking for are the means and the mechanisms to reach these goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Leptin, for this exciting talk. I think from an SnT perspective, we agree a lot with what you say. I would like to ask you to take the stage or take a seat at the high chair. I would like then to invite Björn Ottersten to the stage. This is the Björn that is mentioned already a couple of times. Besides being the founding director of SnT, multiple ERC grant holder, and generally enigmatic figure of research in Luxembourg and beyond, he's also the member of Scientific Council at ERC. So looking forward to a rather short chat because we're running out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlo. Maria, thank you very much for being positive to our invitation to come to Luxembourg and join us at this event, and for your inspiring and very important address also. We have to take this opportunity to have a quick chat. So one of the things you mentioned is I mean, as scientists, we're used to having quite a bit of freedom in what we pursue, to talk to other scientists, to travel, to interact, and so on. At the same time now, we see, because of the geopolitical situation, that research security is of concern for many people. And there is a fear that restrictions may be coming. How do we handle this situation, and how do we strike a balance between openness and being aware of security issues?
I mean, one has to try and combine the two and make sure that one's need for security doesn't block openness. I mean, many of you probably know this when you go to conferences. At least I know it from my own experience. My postdocs and grad students would go to conferences and say, Maria, can I talk about this new result? Somebody's going to steal it. So I tell them, you go and talk about your results, because then people will come and talk to you. You'll get ideas from others. If you don't share your ideas, you don't get anything back. And it's a give and take. And I mean, I'm sure you will have experienced this. It's fun at conferences to hear what others think. It's often very enriching. Of course, there are some colleagues whom you'd rather not give your latest results. And I think it's the same here. So we can't just block that. We can't stop going to conferences as researchers. We can't stop research collaboration across borders as a country. Some things might be worth not discussing with some countries. But a complete clampdown, we've seen the US got this so badly wrong with their China initiative, throwing professors into prisons, and it won't work. We need their knowledge as much as they're interested in our knowledge. So I think treat it with care and sensitivity, but don't clamp down.
So you're optimistic that Europe will get it right, striking this balance?
I don't make the laws.
Another topic you touched upon in your speech is, of course, the investment we need to do in frontier research moving forward to be competitive. But I also I'm concerned when I see, you mentioned in your speech that in the new areas, new innovation areas, the tech industry, we are lagging, perhaps lagging even more. I mean, there are numbers saying, if you look at the highest valued companies in the US, 80% or so are tech companies, and in Europe, the corresponding number is 20%. What does Europe need to do more? And
this is not my expertise. I'm really a very basic scientist, but I have, of course, been talking to industry. I've talked to Draghi. We've read the letter report. What I hear is that it's not the lack of innovation, it's not the lack of ideas, it's not the lack of trying to transfer, but what happens afterwards. And you must experience this here, that an inventor in the US immediately has the whole entire US market once they've made a discovery, once they have a product. Here, you're stuck in your own country, and then you face the red tape. And of course, the big companies have offices that can just about handle that. Even for them, it's hard. But for startups, it really, I mean, everybody talks about the valley of death as if the valley of death are the same everywhere. It seems to me that the red tape, from what I hear from industry, that red tape is the worst. And really, Europe has got to deal with that to make it attractive. I mean, I was talking to a mega biotech, one of the biggest in the US, investor who's thinking of investing in Europe. I haven't heard his results from his tour through Europe, but I'm worried. So I really think, I hope that message, the message is being made. I hope it's being made loud enough so that it's heard in the right quarters. And you're visiting many countries in Europe now, and you're seeing very different ecosystems, approaches and strategies to research and innovations. How do you see the interaction between the European level, the national level, and especially in a small country like Luxembourg? We're a small center, we're a small university and a small country. What role can we play in Europe? Well, I mean, you seem to be setting a great example. I don't think you can learn anything more. I mean, I think there is an important interaction. Of course, a country can only benefit from what Europe has to offer if it itself creates the infrastructure. So you've attracted ERC grants. That's because Luxembourg has decided to create an attractive infrastructure that attracts people like you, who then attract good grants and good young people, good students. Countries that don't do that, you know, if you have to teach 40 hours a week and have an office with a wooden bench and a Bunsen burner, then you will not be in a position to apply for an ERC grant. So the countries have to do it. There are many other examples. The Baltic republics are doing extremely well right now. They're using cohesion funds or regional development funds to help science. Slovenia has done great. Portugal has done great. So there are many examples of a great interaction. And I've already mentioned the high-level competition that really challenges people to do more than they might if they just had comfortable grants at home.
Thank you again for joining us for this event, Maria.
Thank you, Professor Leptin. Thank you, Björn, for this stimulating discussion and also this challenging talk that we heard. I can already feel the researchers of SnT now thinking about the next ERC grant, so we'll be happy to announce some of them next year.